And this is what it tells me. It is double character with 1 to 6 rows and 1 to 2 columns. Okay. I told you you can check what your object is. What is your object? So if I use the function is matrix here, and I put plant matrix, it will check whether plant matrix is a matrix or not. And what it returns here is, it tells me, yeah, it's true. It's a matrix. Very good. Okay. So I hope so far it's pretty clear. So we just to like recap the steps that we did, we created an object called plant, a vector with numbers. We created an object called names. So a second object called names, which will be a character. Okay, sorry. Yeah, the structure function. I will get to it. We created a second object called names. We put these two objects together with the combine function here that we call plant data. So this is a single vector with the two vectors combined. By default, R put this vector as a character vector because it couldn't really do otherwise because there's characters in it as well as numbers. And then from this, using this single big vector called plant data, we created a matrix. So the data will be here. And we want to like spread this data in the table. So a matrix is essentially a vector with 2 dimensions, like a certain number of columns and a certain number of rows. And it will just spread this data in that table. And we'll do it by column because we put by row equal false. And we put that we said that there will be 6 rows and 2 columns. Okay. The structure function that I use is simply to inspect this object. It will tell you what structure it has. So if I rerun this again, it tells me what kind of data is there. It's character data only, which again, at this point is not ideal. We don't really want that. It tells me that there is 6 rows and there is 2 columns. Okay. Dim names we can use also. It's another argument. By default, it put the dim names essentially is to tell R what the names of the columns and what the names of the rows should be. By default, R, as you can see, because we looked at the matrix here, it has no names. It's this is column number 1, column number 2, row number 1, row number 2, and so on. Okay, but if we want, we could actually put names for this. Okay, let's do that. Actually, we can dim names. So I will add to that function here. I will simply add an extra argument here called dim names. Dim names. Okay, if we look at the help here, dim names, it tells me it should be a list, which is another kind of object in R. I will not explain now what this means, but essentially because R is expecting a list here, I will simply write list. Also, I think I'll put this on a different line. So I pressed enter here to put this argument on a different line, just so that it doesn't exit the screen, so that we can see all the arguments together. But if you run this, it will still understand that it should count the first line as well as the second line. Okay, so it's going to be a list, and there's going to be, R is expecting a list with 2 things in it. It will be a list with first the row names and then the column names. And it tells you this in the help file. Dim names is going to be a list of length 2 because the first chunk should be the row names and the second chunk should be the column names, respectively. It tells you what is expected. So it will be a list, and the first thing will be, and I can use again the combine function inside. It will be the, actually I can go ahead and call the row names maybe already with the names of the people. So I can just put names here and it will know that. So the first argument should be the row names, which names we already know is a vector with 6 characters, which is fine. So it will fill these 6 row names as the names of the people. We'll use that vector here. The second one should be obviously a vector of length 2 because there's only 2 columns. So for this, I will actually put a C here. I will use a combine. The first column names will be names. So I will names, and the second one will be n plants, the number of plants. Okay. I can run this whole thing, so I can highlight this and run it, and we can see what happened to the matrix. Now, if we put structure, now it has name, so it tells me, okay, this is still the same as we had before. It's a character with like these 6 rows and 2 columns. The list of all the data that we have in that matrix, but then it tells me, okay, it has attributes. It has, because I did label the columns. The first column is a character with 6 names, and the second one is another character. This is the row names, and then these are the column names, and there's names and there's plants. So it kind of gives me an idea of what I have in that matrix. Okay, don't worry if you're a bit lost, because we will be using R a lot, and we'll always be taking it slowly. So even if things are not clear right now, they'll probably become clear later anyway. Okay. So at this point, I think the main thing is to understand that in R, we're creating objects, and we can use these objects later within functions, or we can inspect these objects. And all the objects that you have created are in your environment. You can see what you have created here. And it kind of tells you what kind of object you have, essentially. Okay. So, Anne, do you want to add something to this?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Just so Flavia is having a little trouble. Flavia, can you share your screen once, just so we can see what's up?
I think it might be difficult for everyone to share the screen.
Because she's not seeing any options on top.
Flavia, can you unmute yourself and maybe tell us what the problem is? Maybe some people have the same problem. We can quickly try to troubleshoot that.
Sorry, it's a silly problem. It's just that my console is taking all the space, and because I don't have the same window as you have this console terminal window below, and you're typing over.
Right.
Oh, okay. I think I just found out what's the problem.
So you have to have this window, the script here. You basically need to like create a script here. So you can either click here in this corner, which is to create a new script, or you simply do a new file and a new R script. And this will give you this extra window here with the script. Otherwise, what you'll have is
yes, I did something very wrong. I get it now. I did
okay, perfect.
From the beginning, I did it wrong. I get it now.
Okay, I hope everyone is fine with this as well.
So no one has any trouble having the script. No one else has the same problem, right? Everyone has a script window and the console window open. Okay, I'll take silence as yes.
Yeah. Okay, so matrix is all right, but actually, yeah. We could, so how about we want to create now, let's try to create a data frame from that matrix. Okay, so we have created that matrix, but we would ideally like to create on a data frame. The idea behind working with a data frame is that a data frame can accommodate, like every column can be its own data type, which is great because with data frames, we might want a column to be characters, like, this categorical variables. Maybe we want another column to be numbers, so we want R to recognize these as numbers, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to just convert this matrix into a data frame. And again, data frame is the kind of object we'll be using the most in R when we do data analysis. And don't worry, you won't always have to do these steps, of course. From like here, we're really starting from scratch. We're manually like creating data in R. But very often you'll be importing data directly from maybe an Excel sheet that you have created to where then that's where you keep your data. And R can automatically import that data as a data frame. So obviously you won't have to do all these steps that we're doing now. Right now we're really working from the bottoms up. We're like creating different vectors. We're trying to put these together into a matrix and converting that matrix into a data frame. And this is really just to get a sense of how some of the functions work. We don't have to do this every time, of course. Okay, so let's try. So we're gonna try to, so we're gonna just call this plant df for data frame. And now we'll just do this. We'll just do as data frame, which is another function in R. And in brackets, R will just want some objects. So if we have a matrix, we can simply put that matrix in here. So plant matrix, which is our matrix, the matrix that we have already created. And it will very nicely convert this matrix into a data frame with this as data frame function. And again, we could have avoided that step of creating a matrix simply by using the data frame function from the beginning. And it would have simply, which is similar to the matrix function in many ways. You can, if you're interested, you can just look at the help file for the data frame function like this. And it will, in the same way that we looked at how to create a matrix, here it tells you how to create a data frame, which is a bit different. But here we already have this data in a matrix, so we don't want to start again. We simply use that matrix and convert it to a data frame with this as data frame function. So let's have a look at what it looks like, this plant data frame. So I'm just going to run this line. And now we have this. It looks a lot nicer. You can also view it. If you click in the environment, you'll see that the data frame looks a bit different from the matrix. There's an arrow here that you can click on and expand, which you cannot do with the matrix. If you click on this, you will see what's happening. It tells me that first, next to the name of that data frame, it tells me I have 6 observations with 2 variables. The first, and it tells me what these variables are. The first variable, so the first column, is called names. It is a character. So, and it has these characters here. It gives me the first few characters. And nplants is another variable. But it tells me it's also a character, which is not ideal. I would like these as numbers, ideally. And it tells me the characters that are there. If I actually click on this line, see what happens. It's actually opening a tab here, and I can have an overview. I can actually view that data frame, which can be very useful, if you want to inspect it. You can see, of course, that I could also inspect it. We can't. Sorry. Yeah, you can also inspect it in the console by just typing the name of the data frame, and then it will just print it here. So you can also have a look at it. Okay, someone is asking, what if we don't want names again? Because yeah, names are repeated now, because I specifically put the row names as names, but we also have a column called names. This is really just for demonstration. So we could subset that from that data frame and maybe remove that column because we already have the row names. Let's do that. Okay, let's subset the data frame. And exclude the first column, right? Let's try to do that. Okay, so again, we're going to overwrite the plant data frame, okay? So I'm going to again create an object called plant data frame, which already exists, so it will simply overwrite it. So I will use the plant data frame, and I want to keep only one particular column. There are several ways to do this. To refer to a column in a data frame, you can, and this is obvious when I looked at the structure. You see that in front of every, sorry, this was the plant matrix. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't look at the structure again. Let's look at the structure as well. So if I put str and then plant data frame, that's what it tells me. So okay, this is a data frame. That's the kind of object it is. So if I did is matrix on that object, if I wanted to check whether this object is a matrix, let's try. Is matrix plant df, it will tell me false. It's not a matrix, it's a data frame. If I put is data frame plant df, now it tells me true, it is a data frame. Very good. So, and from the structure, when I run structure here, you see that there's a $sign here for names, for my column called names, and another $sign for end plant. And that's actually very handy. It tells me that I can use the $sign to refer to these columns. So if I put plant data frame and put a $sign next to it, it will even list, it will give me a list of the columns that I have in that data frame, which is very handy. What I want to do is I want to only keep plant. So I will simply use that. It put these quotations next to it because I have a space here and R doesn't like that. So it wants to make sure that this entire thing is my column name. This is why it's automatically putting these quotation marks. It will not do it for the other column because there's no space in it. Names doesn't have space, so you don't need these quotation marks here. But I will put $sign and then select. I can click on it. This, and if I run this, it will override plant df with that, so that it's only that column. And if I look at it again, now we'll see that it is actually just a vector. So it's not a data frame at this point. If you use the $sign, it will actually only refer to this as the vector form. So, which is not great because I've converted my data frame to only a vector, which is not what I wanted to do. So this is how you can do this. There's another way to refer to your column is with square brackets. So I'm just gonna delete this part because that's not what I wanted to do. And I have to find the square brackets on mine here. So you see these square brackets here. Here I can refer to parts of my data frame, but by using the square brackets, it will preserve that data frame object. So it will not change it to another kind of object. It will still be a data frame when even if I subset from it. This square bracket, so the data frame has 2 dimensions, right? I could actually check this with the dim function. If I call dim with the name of the data frame here, run this, it tells me, oh sorry, because now plant df is no longer a data frame, which is why it tells me no, it has no dimensions. So I'm going to rerun this again. This is the step where I took the matrix and put it into a data frame. So I'm going to override plant df so that we're back to what we had. Which is why, again, if you can appreciate that it's useful to have this script because you can come back to what you did and rerun parts of the script. So I rerun that line. So I did that step again of converting the plant matrix object, which still existed, which was still in my environment, to get back to the data frame I had. So now if I run dim plant df, it will tell me, okay, the dimensions are 6 and 2. The first dimension is the rows. The second dimension is the name of the columns. Always, by default, R deals with these dimensions like this. The first is going to be the rows. The second one would be the columns. All right, which is why in this within the square brackets, this is what you will do. So there's 2 dimensions. So let's say I put 1 here and then 1 again. This means I want to extract the first row and the first column. So this will be a single number. If I would simply run this, this is what will happen. It will tell me, okay, well, you want me to take the value that is in the first row and first column, and that's 5. We can actually look at plant df, and you see first row, first column is 5. So it returns this. Okay. I could refer to the entire first row by simply removing the column index. So I leave that blank, but I still need to keep the comma here. And now this is going to refer to the entire row. And now I have, it's like a tiny subset of the data frame. So it's a tiny data frame itself, which has only the first row, which is 5. I could refer to the first two rows by putting 1 and 2, like 1, 2, 2, with this semicolon here. Now, if I run this, I get the first two rows. I could extend this to make the row from row number 1 to row number 3. And if I run this again, I will get now the first 3 rows. Maybe I want just the row number 2 and number 3. I could replace, so I put from 2 to 3 and so on. I think you get it. Okay, but as we said before, we just want to get rid of the first row of the first column. So we want to keep all our rows. We don't want to delete any of the rows. So we will leave the row index blank so that we keep all of the rows, and we will simply subset the second column. So I want column number 2 here. So if I do this, that's what we'll return. It's going to be, well, let's have a look. Plant df is now, oh, actually, wait, it's still a data frame. So I'm getting lost myself. Okay, I thought we would have another data frame from this. So what we can do, okay, it's still returning a neo vector. So I'll just put as data frame in front of it so that we keep this data frame kind of structure. So I overwrote it, so I rerun this, rerun that. Okay. So now when I look at plant df, we have data frame with only the numbers, but it overwrote everything else. So, my bad. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I can manually assign row names to this. So now we lost the row name, which is not ideal. So we now only have the numbers. I can simply put row names of plant df. So this is another function which will allow me to name these row names. And I want these row names to be my vector names, which has all the names, right? If I run this, you will see, and now looking at plant df, that now I labeled the rows. The column name also has changed now because I'm doing that conversion process. So I will just reassign this column name. There's a function called call name of plant df. So it's a function that does exactly the same thing, but for column names. You'll notice that one has a dot in between row and names. The call name function doesn't have a dot, doesn't really matter, but and I want this, we said, to be a vector, and the first, oh, actually it's only a single value, right? It will be n plants. So now if I look at my data frame, plant df, I have essentially what I want. All right. Okay, I think this is about it for now. Some people have questions, I think. So let's see. Fire is asking, okay, when trying to run row 29, I get a message error in row names. Okay. So if you get an error message at the time when you try to run line 21, row names, it's because plant df at this point, if you look at your object plant df, you'll see it is not, it's neither a matrix or a data frame. It's probably because it is at this point just a vector. So you can return to maybe this step. So you create a data frame, and then when you run this line, it should work. Let me know if it does. The last thing we'll do for now, because we are going to run out of time if we spend too much time on this.
So just to add, in order to check, just either run class with your object name or dim object name, so it'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, I will put this in the script as well. If you want to check what so it's going to be the function class, and you put in your object. So if I put class plan.df, it tells me it is a data frame. If it tells you that it's not, maybe, so for example, one of my other objects that is not a data frame is names. It's just a vector. If I put class of names, it will tell me it's a character. So it's a character vector. So this row names function, it will only work on a matrix or data frames. And you can check this if you have any doubt. You can check this with the help file. Again, you can. So checking the function row names with a question mark in front of it, it will tell you, okay, row names is going to be, there's going to be one thing in it. It can only have one argument, one object within those brackets. And it tells you that X, or the object you put between the brackets, should be an object of class data frame or any other class for which a method has been defined. So I think for matrix it also works because it can take row names essentially. But a vector, a simple vector like we had, cannot take row names just because there's no rows, basically. I hope that's clear for everybody. The last thing I want to do, if we have this data frame, so the only thing, oh wait, I think I know something. Yeah, if you run this code in this order, all of it in the same order, you should end up with what you want. I'll just put it in the chat in case some people have added extra lines or have not been able to type the code like I did. So I'm putting this in the chat for everybody to see.
And we'll also save it and put it in the group.
Yeah, at the end of the session, we will save the codes. We'll make it available for everybody, but just for everybody to maybe have access. You can literally just copy and paste this entire code. You can put in the script and run everything, and you should end up with this exactly the same objects that I have. Okay. So yeah, the last thing I want to do is add another column, maybe just to get more information, maybe like an extra variable. For the people that gave me the number of plants they have in their rooms, can you give me the country you're from? And we'll just make another vector with the country names and add this as an extra column in this data frame that we already have. So, okay, we have Faye is from England, or is in England. We have, so only the people that gave me the number of plants. So Faye, Ranjana, Tan, Tashi, Flavia, and Aliana, if you can tell me where you're from. Okay, Aliana is from Saudi Arabia. Ranjana from India, and 5 from England. Tashi is from Bhutan, and I think we're still missing Tan. And yeah, I think Tan. Bhutan. Oh, okay, Bhutan as well. Okay, cool. Let's do this. So let's create another vector called countries. Okay. Okay, we'll just name this countries. We'll assign, or just country maybe, singular. Country, and we'll create another vector again using the combine function. And this will be just a series of characters, which will be, okay, the first one I think was, okay, Phi, we said Phi from England. So we'll put England here. So I'm respecting the same order, right, that we have on my table, because otherwise they'll be mixed up, right? The second one is Ranjana from India. Third one would be Tan from Bhutan. And Tashi also from Bhutan. Notice again, I'm putting quotation mark because these will be characters. I want these to be treated as characters. If I don't put quotation marks, anyway, R will send again a message saying, oh, I can't find this object that called England. Okay, so we have now 1, 2, 3, 4. Flavia is from Brazil. So much diversity. Oops, Brazil. And lastly, Aliana from Saudi Arabia. Okay, so we making this vector. I'm going to run this line. And we end up with, okay, a country vector. Okay, we check it has 6 values, so we're good with the country names. And we're going to create a new column in the plan df data frame, which will going to be countries. So, and we can simply do this, plan df, and we're going to refer to the column called country. So there's at this point, if I run this, it will give me an error because it'll tell me, oh, it's null. Because there's no column called country at this point. But I can assign something to that column, that new column that doesn't exist yet, and I'll just put country, which is an object, the object I created. And if I run this, you'll notice that if you inspect plan.df, it now has an extra column called country, and with the countries matching the name because I put them in the same order. Yeah. Okay, I'm kind of wondering if it's worth kind of. Yeah, I think that's fine. So there's, just to be sure we know how to kind of manipulate these data frames. The $sign is one way to refer to a column in a data frame. There's actually 2 other ways. One I already mentioned is with the index of rows and columns. So if I want to, oops, I'm just going to create another column also called, maybe I'll call it country 2 with the same countries, but just for you to see like how else we can create a column. So with the square brackets, I'm referring to like which dimension I want. Remember, the first index is the row on this blank. So I'll just leave that blank here. Then the comma, and then this will be my column index. I want to create a third column. So for now, I only have 2. So this will be column number 3, which I will assign the name country. So let's see what happens if I look at it. Okay, now I have an extra column also with the country names. You'll notice that it has no names though, because I only said, okay, it's going to be column number 3. It put by default v3. We can override this, and with that function, call names that we already used. And this we can call it something else if we want. There's another thing we can do to refer to another column so again, it will be with the square brackets. Again, leaving the row index blank because we don't want to change the row names. We don't want to create extra rows. And instead of an index, instead of a number, we'll give it a name already. So we'll call this country 2. Okay. So I just put this in quotation marks, so this character. So R knows this. That's a name. It's going to be a character. Same thing. I'm just going to use country. And if I do this now, let's look at it one last time. Now it's creating a column with a name because that's the name I gave it, called country. So essentially this line, the line 38 and line 40 are doing pretty much exactly the same thing in 2 different ways. One using the $sign, one using simply the square bracket form. Okay, I hope this is clear for everybody. We'll come back to this anyway later. So if you feel a bit lost, I think it's okay. You can come back to this script later anyway. We'll save it somewhere. And yeah, so this is just a general intro of how to create vectors, how to create a data frame, how to kind of like inspect your data frame and how to modify it and also subset it. So what we did before was to subset it by only having a single column. Actually, right now I have a data set with 3 columns with the country names. I don't want that. Let's just subset from it again one last time, so that I really have only the columns I want, so only the first 2. And to do this, I will overwrite plan.df by assigning something to it again. So I will obviously subset from plan df. If I run this, it will just replace plan df with plan df. So obviously it's nothing will change. But if I use the square brackets here, I can subset it, but okay, I don't want to subset the rows. So again, I will leave the rows blank. And maybe I want the first two columns, column 1 and 2. So you can do this with a semicolon here. So it will subset with column from column 1 to 2. You could also selectively select column 1 and 2 with the C function. And instead of so I put a dot here. So let's say if I put 1 and 3, this will specifically subset and keeping only column 1 and column 3, right? Instead of column 1, 2, 3, which is why it can be useful to do it this way. If I run only this, you'll see that that's what we get. We get column 1 and column 3, which is called V3. I want column 1 and 2, so I'll replace the 3 with the 2 here, run only this, and you'll see that's what we get. Or I could, yeah, again, I could simply put 1, 2, 2, which is exactly the same. Run this, I can look at plan df again, and I get the data frame that I wanted. And that's it. That's how you can create data. That's how you can modify your data frame, creating a new column and subset from it. Maybe you want to get rid of maybe the first, I don't know. For example, we could say, oh, Aliana is an outlier because she has so many plants. So we want to exclude her from the data set because she's making everything screw with the jungle that she has for a room. So I could subset that if I want. For example, and that I could do here. I would have to want only rows from 1 to 5, excluding row number 6. If I ran this, I will run only this so it doesn't overwrite this object. But if I just select this part to run this, it will return what would happen, and I would indeed end up with a data frame that doesn't have the last row. And that's it. Or maybe I want to exclude anyone that doesn't have plants. Maybe I'm only interested in people that do have plants, and I could subset and instead remove row number 3 to 5. And that would, oh, sorry, that is selecting row number 3 to 5. So we end up with only the people that don't have plants. So instead, I think I put a minus. If I put a minus here, I think it works. No, it doesn't work. Oops. So instead, I will selectively have row number 1, row number 2, and row number 6. So essentially, this obviously would remove row number 3 to 5 because I'm only selecting row number 1, 2, and 6. And if I run this, boom, I end up with only the people that have plants, basically. All right, again, this was simply like for some of you that already know R, this was probably very redundant because this is really basic things. But with this course, again, we will obviously, that's one of the main goals is to teach you how to use R. And these are some of the basic things you want to do. Create objects, create a data frame, and kind of subset, manipulate your data frame a little bit. Okay, I think at this point we can just get back to the presentation.
Did we lose him?
I think we did. But in the meantime, I'll just answer that question. Rohit asked, yeah, so you can run it on, you can just select the column and run the function on that column. But I would say it's better to create a separate object because then you can keep manipulating that object instead of having to run it again and again. And we will send the code, we'll save the script and put it up in the group. So don't have to worry about that.
Hi there. Sorry, I disappeared for a second.
Yeah.
All right.
And so in terms of use, there isn't necessarily much difference. At least in the most basic functions, you won't find much difference between data frame and matrix. It's just that data frames allow you to have character vectors as well as numeric vectors, but matrix is only supposed to be numeric vectors.
numeric or just character or.
Yeah.
Data frame is easier to use when you have a mix. It's heterogeneous. So you can have a mix of data types in it.
Yeah. And also it's like, I think the difference really comes into play in more developing and like higher functions. The basic functions, there's no difference between them.